Hello everyone. This is going to be working through problems for lesson 11.2 where we're comparing data in two different dot plots. So before we begin, I want to remind you that what we can do when we're doing dot plots is the ability to compare two different populations or distributions in three different ways. One, the shape. Are there clusters? Are there outliers? Are there gaps in data? Any of that describes the shape. Secondly, the centers. We'll probably be using mostly median numbers for centers. And then how widespread is the data? And that is also known as the range. So let's go ahead. The problem set is not very long, and the problems are fairly straightforward. There are a lot of fill in the blanks so that you can look at and come to conclusions and observations about the data. So let's start with number 1, and we're comparing two dot plots showing the number of miles run per week for two different classes, Class A and Class B. So what do we notice about here? We have two very different shapes. So this one, there's a big gap here, and here they seem to be all in a row with no missing number. So let's see what we talk about. So Group A Group A, which one is clustered in the middle? That would be Class B. However, Class A is clustered around two areas. So you see area 1 here, area 2 here. So in this case, Class A is clustered around two areas. So we see two different distributions with different shapes. Problem number 2. We're going to look at number of miles run per week for two different classes. And again, we have a Class A where there's a gap here, and a Class B where there is a steady flow of numbers between each of the numbers, frequency on all the different numbers. So let's look at spread now. So in Class A, we go from 4 miles all the way to 14. So the spread is from 4 to 14 miles with here a gap or no gap, a wide gap in the middle there between 6 and 12. There's no numbers. While Class B spread starts at 3 and it goes to 9. So from here to here. And here we have no gaps. So here we're looking at spread and shape. Let's continue on to problem number 3. Still looking at the same class. Let's see what other information we can draw from it. Let's look at the ranges. So range is the spread. It's the maximum subtract the minimum. So here we have 14 minus 4. So that range would be 10. And for Class B, the maximum is 9 and the minimum is 3, and the range is 6. And that makes a lot of sense when you look at the two plots. The Class B is much more tightly clustered. So what do we know about this between medians and ranges? What do they tell us? So which one, the median or the range, allows you to compare the centers? Well, median is defined as a center number, so we'll do median. And then the spread is called the range. So when we talk in the mathematical terms, we have median for the centers and range for the spread. You should get this from the last homework. Problem number 5. The dot plot shows the number of letters in spellings of 12 different words. Now we're going to describe the plot. So the dots have one group. Do they have any outliers? No. Is there any breaks? So there's two different groups? No. So what we're really seeing is something that looks like it is evenly spread. Now you might get a different one when you do your HRW, but please look at those options. In the peak, now this is peak, not median, so which number has the most dots on it? And that happens to be number 8. So 8 has the peak. Number 6, we're going to look at the same, almost the same information. Yes, the same information. And let's see what else. Let's complete the description of the spread. The dots are spread from 3 to, well, what is this? This spread is looking for the min to the max. So we have 3 down here. And this number is 9, halfway between 8 and 10. So the spread goes from 3 to 9. Okay, that's not the range, but that is the spread. Okay, now let's continue on. Let's look at some other charts, graphs. Now let's look at these before we answer any questions. What do we notice about City A? Well, they have a nice cluster here, but they have this strange data point out by 1. City B, on the other hand, has no outliers, and things are relatively clustered. So let's see. The question is like, which one is clustered in one interval with one outlier? That would be City A. While obviously City B is relatively uniform in one interval. So very consistent, and also between 8 and 12, much tighter range. So the dot plots show the mean number of days for 2 cities. So let's look at the comparison of the spreads. So again, we have the same information with City A has the 1 outlier, and City B does not have any outliers. So what does that do to the information? City A data spreads from 1 down here to 12. The maximum is 12, with 1 outlier. Whereas City B goes from 8 to 12, and there is no outliers. Now, what is that going to do? What is the impact of an outlier on any kind of graph or data? So let's look at it. Here we have one where it's all clustered in Group A shoe sizes. It's all clustered down in the left, but it has this 1 outlier at 13. Whereas Group B is relatively clustered. There's nothing at 11, but in general it's clustered. So let's see, we're looking for the one that's clustered to the left with a far outlier. That's Group A. And then that would be Group B is clustered to the right with no major outliers. All right, we have the same 2 graphs comparing again. Let's look at what happens to the range with and without the outlier. So Group A with the outlier is the range. So we've got 13 and all the way down to 6.5. So the range, and that is 13 minus 6.5 is 6.5. However, if we took away that 13, we're looking at a range from 9 to 6.5, and that is much tighter. That's 2.5. And the range for Group B is 11.5 down to 8.5. So it's 11.5 minus 8.5, or 3. So if you didn't have that outlier, the 2 groups would be much more similar. We're actually almost done. You can see how straightforward looking at graphs and interpreting them are. As long as you understand the key mathematical definitions, you just apply them over and over. So let's look at this one. Now I'm going to take my time on this one. Can 2 dot plots have the same median and range but have completely different shapes? Let's look at it. Before we do it, we have group A, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the group A looks like 1 on each number. Group B I'm going to do in red, but I'm going to put it on the same, or right below it. So let's look at that. So we'll do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 1 at 1, 3 at 3, and 1 at 5. So in fact, let's look at it. The median in both cases is the same, which is 3. And the range in both cases is the same. It's 5 minus 1 is 4. So the answer is yes, we can have two graphs or plots that have the same median and range and yet look quite different. So let's answer the questions. Suppose one group is group A and the other has group B numbers. The median is for both 3 and the range for both is 4. Therefore, you can conclude that two dot plots can have the same median range but have completely different shapes. So the median and range are two descriptions, but you do need the shape as well to complete the description of the particular dot plot. Last question. What value is most affected by the outlier, the median or the range? Let's think about that. So the median is a center number, and whether you have, I'm going to pull up one of these others that have the outlier on it. Okay, let's look at this one that had the outlier. Okay, so whether this number is 1 or 7, it is not going to change the median, which is on the 10. So median is 10. And if this outlier is 1 or 7, that's not going to change it because it's still just the lowest number. On the other hand, the range with the outlier is 12 minus 1 is 11. Without the outlier, the range is 12 minus 8, or 4. So these two numbers are quite different. So the answer, let's go with, now that we see the difference in median or range based on the outlier, an outlier greatly increases the median or the range, it increases the range. Whereas the median will not generally be affected, as it's in the middle of all the values. A dot plot can show these effects. Okay, a dot plot is a very good visual way to see what's going on in a population. So those are all of the problems similar to what you will be doing in HRW. So it should not take very long. These are pretty much drop down, fill in the blank, most of them, and even the math itself is just subtraction because you're calculating ranges or calculating medians. So with that, I will turn you over to your homework, and if you have any questions, please ping me. Thank you.